All boats look good at a boat show, but when buying one, most people get an adrenaline rush and don't give it the inspection they should. All boats have a cost-utility equation, and often boats of the same price have big differences in the little things that count. Let us help you look in the right places. Today, BoatTEST Inspects center consoles. Center consoles are the most popular fiberglass boats built today, with about 35,000 new units sold each year. When you first look at a center console boat, it seems that it's pretty simple and they all might look pretty much the same. But the fact is, they are more complex than most people ever imagine. Let's take a close inspection of center consoles and discover the things that you should look for when making a buying decision. We'll start at the helm because that's where you'll be spending most of your time. Does the console have a windshield? Because you'll want one. Is it glass or plastic? Is there distortion in the curves? And does it have a protective header? Does it join at the T-top or not? And does it have a windshield wiper with a washer? On most center consoles, the top of the console has a depression for stuff, but is it deep enough to hold things in place? And if so, does it have a drain? Is it padded? The compass should be in line with the wheel, so bearings are easy to take by the operator. Is the space on the vertical dash panel large enough for the size and number of screens you want? And what color is it? Dark colors are easier on the eyes, but most are bright white. Grab rails are required to be port and starboard, but are they ergonomic and easily at hand? Is there enough space between the leaning post and the wheel for you to comfortably steer while standing, particularly for heavy operators? Can you see over the console? If not, is there a fold-out platform available? Does the wheel tilt and how far? Can you reach the wheel while seated? Is there a steering knob on the wheel? Because you'll want one. Make sure you take into account what kind of steering the boat has. Cable, hydraulic, or power steering. Is the throttle and shift based at a 45-degree angle or less? Or is it based more vertical, meaning you have to lift up rather than push forward? Does the boat have a joystick or bow thruster? And if so, where are these controls? Are they within arm's reach from the helm position? Some boats have both, but one or the other will do just fine in most cases. Is there adequate room for the VHF, and is the mic handy, or is it placed out of sight? Is there a 12-volt outlet and USB plug handy at the helm, and is there a cubby or drink holder, or a dedicated place for the smartphone to safely stow when plugged in? Many ignition switches are in the knee strike zone, or are too far away for a normal kill switch lanyard. Lockable glove boxes are always welcome. Is there a cubby or net below the dash for stuff? Are the breakers handy, or do you have to get down on your knees to see them? Or are they located somewhere else on the boat? Look for a molded-in footrest, but make sure it's placed right for the length of your legs. Some boats have 2 footrests. Is the leaning post or seat comfortable? Does it have a soft bolster? Are armrests on the seats, and if so, do they raise or lower with positive detents to keep them in place? Can the seat or leaning post be adjusted fore and aft? Basic center consoles often come without a T-top, but no matter how inexpensive the boat is, you will need one. Do the supports for the T-top screw down to the deck, or are they integral into the console or windshield? Both serve the purpose, but one is much more expensive than the other. Do cross supports for the T-top impair your vision forward? Powder-coated aluminum supports are better than raw aluminum, which is nearly impossible to keep looking good, but details like this are always a cost trade-off. Virtually every center console has a compartment underneath the console. In smaller boats, they're mostly for storage, but in larger boats, they can house a marine toilet and even a bed, maybe a mini galley as well. Access hatches on the side of the console are notoriously hard to get into and out of, unless the top is cut away or the hatch is in the front of the console. Again, the larger owner should take note. If you plan to have a marine toilet, is there enough headroom to actually sit on it comfortably? And what is the overall headroom of the compartment? Are the bulkheads and overhead padded? Know whether the inside of the compartment is a finished fiberglass liner or painted fiberglass, or covered with some sort of synthetic material. Is there an inside lock on the compartment door? And is there a compartment light and proper ventilation? If the battery switch is in the compartment, is it easily reached? Anglers may want to stow rods in the compartment, so is there a provision for them? How many and for what length? Is the compartment lockable from the outside? You don't want your expensive rod stolen. Is the access opening to the back of the instrument panel covered with snap-on vinyl or a solid hatch? The cockpit is the business end of the boat, so now is the time to ask where you're going to use the boat and will it be strictly for fishing or will it also be used for family boating? If you're taking the boat offshore, you'll want the freeboard and cockpit depth to be as great as possible. The higher the gunnels, the safer the boat. Cockpit depths of 26 inches are average. 28 inches and more are better for offshore work where conditions can get sloppy. Cockpit depths of 24 inches are on smaller boats designed for coastal or inshore work. Are there enough rod holders in the cap rail for your needs, and are there well-padded bolsters around the perimeter of the cockpit? How many rods can be stowed in the gunnels? Would you rather have a folding seat there or even a step? Is there a tow rail so you can lock yourself in when you're leaning on the gunnel while fighting a fish? What is the square footage of the cockpit, and is there enough room for you and a number of people you plan to have on board fishing? Seating is at a premium in a center console because they were originally designed for fishing, not family cruising. Will you use the boat for family boating as well as fishing? If so, you'll want a fold-away transom seat, and some models even have fold-out seats from one or both of the side gunnels. What is the capacity of the live well, and is it big enough for your fishing needs? Most all live bait wells are blue with rounded corners. Some are pressurized to protect the bait, have full column aeration, and acrylic tops so you can see inside. Is there a place to rig your lines and prepare your baits? Is there a cutting surface and tool storage? A location for tackle boxes is a given, but make sure there's enough room. Some builders skimp. Is there a place for a cooler to be locked in place, or is there an insulated self-draining cooler somewhere in the cockpit? Are there insulated self-draining fish boxes in the cockpit deck, or are they forward? And do they have a macerator? Is there a raw water washdown bib in the cockpit? Some premium boats will also have a freshwater outlet. Many builders install a freshwater engine flush hookup already plumbed to the engine. This makes flushing easier and faster. How large are the cockpit scuppers and what type of scupper plate is used? We like 2-inch pipes, and the more the better. Plates with holes in them restrict flow and are easily clogged with debris. Large open scuppers with minimum retainers in each stern quarter are best. Is there a transom door, and which way does it open? Those that open out can be used for emergency dewatering. Check out the swim platforms, port and starboard, around the engine. If you plan to use the boat for water sports, bigger platforms are better, and a service platform in front of the engines will be a welcome feature. Make sure the outboard well drains overboard. For water sports, conventional fold-up stainless steel ladders are more functional than the emergency plastic ladders that some builders install to meet basic ABYC standards. Most center console builders have a hatch in the deck to access pumps, sea strainers, fuel filters, and outboard fuel priming bulbs, bilge pumps, and other equipment. Take the time to note the placement of the bilge pump and the kind of float switch it has. Traditional free-floating switches are problematic. Pumps should be at the lowest point. Make sure you can easily reach the fuel priming pumps and the levers on the through-hull connections. Side doors are a relatively new amenity, and they make water sports more convenient and help when boarding the boat from a floating dock. Make sure there's adequate space between the T-top supports and the gunnels to easily pass when fighting a fish, and there should be no tripping hazards. Virtually all center consoles have a seat molded into the forward part of the console. Not so common is a practical handhold, so check out what is there. Some boats have storage under the seat. Make sure it's serviceable. Again, most center consoles have molded-in platforms in a V-shape port and starboard. Make sure that the hatches have deep gutters and have a rubber seal so water won't get below. All deck hatches should also have deep gutters with drains, and if they do they direct water overboard or into the bilge? Can it hold a 5-gallon bucket? Every boat should have one somewhere. Inside the seat compartments, is there a fiberglass liner or carpet? In small center consoles, it may be impossible to have compartments that drain overboard, and that's why the gutters and rubber gaskets are so important. Are there backrests for the seats? Is there a provision for a table? And where does all of this equipment stow? How much room is there between the seats to use as a footwell? Handholds are required for all seats. Are they recessed, or do they stand proud from their surface, thus becoming a trip or snag hazard? On the foredeck, there should be 2 appropriately sized pull-up cleats for mooring lines. What kind of lock is on the anchor locker or hatch? turn and lock, or lift and lock. Lift and lock is our preference because it's always latched. Does the hatch have tension hinges or a strut to keep it open, or nothing at all? If nothing, can the hatch lie flat on the deck? Inside should be a cleat for the anchor line and good access to the ground tackle below. Some boats will have an option for a windlass. You'll appreciate that addition. Is the anchor locker self-draining, or does it drain into the bilge? It must be remembered that all center consoles are open boats, which means they are naturally susceptible for water coming aboard in turbulent conditions. A large wave can swamp a center console. Now, this circumstance is unusual, but it does happen, and the boat scuppers may not drain water fast enough to avoid capsize. In these conditions, the free surface effect will cause the boat to turn turtle. A few brands of center consoles have what is known as level flotation, which means they will float level if swamped, but most have what is known as basic flotation, which means if swamped, some part of the boat will float above the water, usually the tip of the bow. It's important to know which kind of flotation your boat has and prepare yourself and the boat accordingly. The most important decision when buying a center console involves basic specs. What is the beam, displacement, freeboard, height, and fuel capacity? Generally, greater beam means more stability and, of course, more interior room. Greater displacement is a reflection of the beam, gunnel height, and infrastructure, and generally, heavier boats ride better than lighter ones. Fuel capacity is important for range and the boat's mission. Larger boats are made for offshore and naturally cost much more than boats designed for coastal work in normal sea conditions. It's important that you match your boat's capabilities to these conditions. Deeper V boats are made for going fast in choppy conditions, but they're not as efficient as boats with less dead rise at normal cruising speeds, and they'll roll more at rest. All hull shapes are a compromise. Find the one that best suits your boat use. Today, more and more boats have hulls that have 1 or 2 steps. This design is intended to allow the boat to go faster and be more fuel efficient at cruising speeds. The improvement in speed seems to be from 3% to 5% generally, and as much as 10% in one case, according to the builder. Fuel consumption is generally believed to be on the order of 0.1 to 0.3 miles per gallon improvement. Thankfully, today, consumers don't have to worry about the hull and substructure construction simply because no matter what the price point, fiberglass boats rarely have a hull failure. That's our look at the important considerations when buying a center console. Now you know what to look for and the trade-offs when buying one.